The story beginning in a world where a young girl gazes at her torn stuffed puppy, her heart heavy with sadness. Her mother proposes throwing it away, arguing that even if they repair it, the toy would no longer look nice. Since the family is wealthy, the mother sees no issue in simply buying a new one. Though the girl feels some attachment to the toy, she eventually agrees to discard it, swayed by her mother's opinion. So, they toss the toy into the garbage bin outside their house along with the rest of the trash. The bag travels through a ventilation system and ends up in a garbage truck, which carries it to the city's underground junkyard for final disposal. Meanwhile, as the mother heads back home, a mysterious man in a cloak watches her intently, silently judging her for so carelessly discarding things. Not long after, the same garbage truck arrives at the junkyard, and a boy slips in behind it. Shortly after, a guard spots him rummaging through piles of trash in a room filled with garbage bags. Growing suspicious, the guard aims his gun at the boy and demands to know his identity and why he's there. He adds that there have been reports of a trash raider who's been undermining the city's cleanliness by dragging garbage back out into the open. Convinced the boy is the notorious trash raider, the guard triggers the emergency alarm. Within moments, 2 more guards rush in to capture him. Seizing the opportunity, the raider hurls garbage at them, startling the guards and bolts through the ventilation tunnels. Just as he's about to slip out the back door, the gate slams shut, giving the guards a clear shot. But the raider suddenly taps into a hidden ability, enhancing his speed so drastically that he effortlessly evades the bullets. He ends up getting shot by one of the bullets, but still manages to escape through the sewer system. Once the situation settles, he emerges onto a deserted street and finally breaks his silence. Insisting that he's not a raider, he explains that everything he did was to recover items that never should have been discarded, like the stuffed puppy. The following morning, rumors about the trash raider begin to circulate. 2 women gossip about how disgusting and harmful such people are to society, labeling them as filthy. Nearby, a man dressed in ragged clothes, an obvious outcast in this pristine city. He overhears their conversation but silently walks away. He exits the city through a small door, stepping into a slum located just beyond its borders. News of the trash raid quickly spreads throughout the slums, stirring concern among the residents, who now fear a heavy police presence. A girl named Chiwa instantly pointed the finger at her friend Rudo, the boy with the red eyes, certain he was the one behind the whole mess. Rudo is busy sorting through the pile of trash he's gathered, mostly broken toys and accessories he plans to fix, so he doesn't notice Chiwa approaching at first. When she gets closer, she demands to know if he once again risked his life sneaking into the city just to steal garbage. She warns him how harsh the city's waste control laws are, saying that if he's caught, he could end up locked away for good. Rudo replies that these aren't trash, but perfectly usable items that the wealthy city dwellers carelessly discard. He shares how much pity he feels for these things that were thrown away so thoughtlessly. That's why he brought them back to fix them up, so he can sell them to people in the slums who will actually appreciate them. Chiwa gets where Rudo is coming from, but part of her can't help but question if he's developed feelings for trash. At that moment, 3 thugs arrive to pick on Rudo. The one in the center mocks the foul smell and tells Chiwa she shouldn't be seen with a trash collecting nobody like him. One of the other bullies kicks over a lamp Rudo had just repaired and sneers, saying there's no use fixing junk since no one would ever want something touched by a nobody like him. Chiwa, confused by their behavior, can't figure out what their problem is after all. She sees them as no different from Rudo, but the arrogant guy refuses to agree, insisting that they're nothing like Rudo and could escape the slums if they just put in the effort. Supposedly, the slums were originally created to house criminals, and both the 3 guys, Chiwa and Rudo, are all descended from them. Everything seemed to be going fine for a while, until Rudo's parents went on a killing rampage, shattering whatever sympathy or trust the townspeople still had. After the jerks finally leave, Chiwa tries to lift Rudo's spirits by telling him he's a kind person, and that he'll definitely succeed in life. She then spots the stuffed puppy, and Rudo shyly admits he wanted to give it to her as a present. But just as she's about to accept it, her mother arrives, yells at her to stay away from him, and pulls her away. That evening, Rudo returns home and discovers Rikto waiting inside. Rikto is the same man who had been eavesdropping on the 2 women in the city earlier. Rikto teases Rudo for failing to win Chiwa over, admitting he had been spying on him. On that note, Rikto asks how Rudo's trash raid went the night before. He insists Rudo doesn't need to struggle so hard to make money since he's still just a kid, even though they aren't blood related. Rikto makes it clear that he sees Rudo as family. Rudo feels grateful toward Rikto, explaining that he took him in after after he was left alone following his parents' crime spree and has cared for him ever since. That's why Rudo is determined to pay him, even if it means scavenging through the city's trash. Rikto spots the injury on Rudo's arm and, realizing it's a gunshot wound, quickly tends to it. He sternly warns Rudo to stay away from the junkyard from now on. Rudo brushes it off, saying the wound is nothing compared to the scars left by his parents, revealing that his hands are marked with dark blemishes. Even so, Rikto insists he must stop before the guards discover who he really is. If they do, he'll be thrown into the abyss, just like his father was. Since he was a child, Rudo has faced scorn from everyone because of his strange-looking hands. But ever since Rikto gave him a pair of gloves, he's found the courage to keep going. As usual, Rikto playfully nudges Rudo to hurry up and give Chiwa the stuffed puppy before someone else takes the chance. Rudo, of course, refuses, leading to a light-hearted argument between them. Unbeknownst to them, the same cloaked figure from earlier stands outside, listening in on their conversation. The following day, Rikto attempts to adjust Rudo's expression. He gently holds Rudo's cheek and tells him that he should try smiling once in a while, and that even if he's not truly happy, faking a smile can at least hide the sadness from others. After a while, Rudo breaks free from Rikto's grip and steps outside. Looking around, he realizes it's already morning. Then he catches his reflection in the water and thinks to himself that a face as messed up as his can't be fixed. Still, he questions whether Chiwa might have gone outside. He moves toward the abyss, remembering that he doesn't need to go far for garbage. Everything in that area ends up dumped into the abyss. The place is essentially a massive landfill, but it's not just discarded objects that end up there, even people, including criminals. As he gazes into the abyss, he notices someone about to be cast down. The sight makes him think of his father, who was supposedly thrown into the pit as well, though he has no way of knowing if that's truly what happened. Just then, Chiwa shows up and mentions that another criminal is about to be thrown in. Rudo is startled by her sudden appearance, and she comments that it's unusual to see him in that area. To Rudo, the view from that spot isn't anything special. Not that the slums have much of a view to begin with, but this place feels especially bleak. The slums were deliberately built at the edge of the city as a reminder to its residents. Step out of line, and you'll be tossed into the abyss. It's ironic. No matter how hard you try to avoid witnessing people being thrown to their deaths, you end up seeing it anyway. So Chiwa warns Rudo that she doesn't want him ending up like that. She knows there's a lot of trash out there that doesn't deserve to be discarded, but that doesn't mean he should risk his life for it. If he gets caught, he'll be thrown into the pit, and that would break her heart because she loves him. The moment Rudo hears those words, he gets flustered and ends up rolling on the ground. Chiwa notices he's still holding the stuffed puppy from the previous day. He extends the toy toward Chiwa, offering it as a gift, though he admits she might not want it since he found it in the dump. Chiwa happily accepts it, and the moment she takes it, Rudo dashes off joyfully only to trip and crash into some guards along the way. There are roughly 4 guards. They don't bother him and simply walk away, leaving Rudo puzzled about why they were there in the first place. He keeps running, desperate to find Rikto and warn him, but when he finally reaches home, he's met with a horrifying sight. The masked man is stabbing Rikto, his body drenched in blood. Rudo tries to scream for help, but no one is around to hear him. Rudo charges at the man in a desperate attempt to fight him, but the masked attacker easily shoves him aside. By the time Rudo regains consciousness, it's already too late. The man has finished with Rikto, frozen in shock. Rudo can only watch helplessly as the mysterious man walks away. When he finally snaps out of his daze, he screams Rikto's name and rushes to his side, but there's nothing he can do. Rikto tells Rudo that he needs to go, but Rudo refuses to leave his friend behind like that. Rikto yells at him, insisting that he's the one who has to change this rotten world, that only he has the power to make a difference, so he must survive. Rudo, overwhelmed with love for Rikto, can't bring himself to let go. He just keeps holding on tightly. Just then, conveniently, the guards arrive and catch him next to Rikto's lifeless body. Without hesitation, they stun him with an electric shock and accuse him of murder. Claiming he killed Rikto, Rudo tries to protest, insisting they've got it all wrong. Rudo warns them that Rikto isn't dead yet. He can still be saved if they hurry. However, the guards, who see themselves as superior to the people in the slums, couldn't care less about the lives of those who live there. All they care about is capturing whoever they assume is the culprit. Rudo tries to explain that he didn't kill anyone and that the real killer had just gotten away. However, they accuse him of being from the slums and insist he's surely capable of murder. From there, he's immediately taken to the abyss. He's left hanging at the edge of the abyss as people begin to gossip about him. Naturally, Chiwa hears the rumors too. They say he killed the man who raised him, branding him a murderer. Chiwa is heartbroken, as she had believed in him. While he is on the rope to be dropped, the priests declare that he is a criminal who deserves to be thrown into the abyss. Everyone starts screaming the slogan, "Send the filth to the pit," and urging the priest to throw him. Rudo wonders if there is anyone who wants to hear him out. He didn't do it, and no one wants to believe him. Rudo looks around and sees Chiwa standing in the crowd, and he can feel that she is also condemning him. In her mind, she says she had trusted him. She defended him even when everyone else called him a murderer. But in the end, he let her down and truly became one. She let the gift Rudo once gave her and leave, filled with disappointment. Watching her leave and realizing no one is willing to speak up for him, Rudo is overwhelmed with sorrow. He had already been judged before anything even happened, and that alone makes him resent everyone. With bitterness in his heart, he promises to make them all pay. Just then, he's tossed straight into the abyss, swallowed by darkness. He feels his life slipping away as a series of visions flash before his eyes. Everything fades as his eyes shut, consumed by the void until, to his surprise, they open once more. Rudo comes to the realization that he's truly been cast into the abyss. He had always heard stories about how dark it was down here, but what he never knew is that it's a living hell. As he surveys his surroundings, strange noises and movements catch his attention. When he turns around, he's met with the terrifying sight of a massive creature made entirely of trash. Rudo takes off running for his life, but the trash creature summons reinforcements. In no time, two more appear, trapping him. He can hardly wrap his head around the fact that massive heaps of garbage are somehow alive and attacking him. But the danger is all too real, and the human skull lying on the ground makes it clear what his fate will be if he doesn't do something fast. Suddenly, the trash beneath Rudo's feet collapses, sending him crashing down to a lower level. The impact leaves him in pain, the air knocked out of his lungs. To make things worse, the stench down here is unbearable, making it hard to breathe. He knows he has to find a hiding spot before the monsters catch up to him. But as he scans the area, he sees nothing but piles of garbage, offering no safe refuge at all. Rudo is on the verge of despair, convinced that death is inevitable no matter what he does. However, Ricto's dying words flash through his mind, reigniting his will to survive. He refuses to die before making everyone pay. Those who treated him like garbage, the people who let him be thrown into the pit, and especially the heartless murderer who took Ricto's life. One of the monstrous creatures tries to ambush him while Rudo is distracted. Rudo's fury surges, and he swings a metal pipe with such force that he sends the creature's head flying. At the same time, a man standing on a nearby trash heap notices Rudo across the garbage-strewn field and watches him with curiosity. Rudo is putting up a fight against the monsters, swinging his pipe with all his strength, but it barely affects their trash-made bodies. One of them knocks him aside, and he crashes to the ground, bouncing painfully across the filthy floor. Eventually, Rudo grabs hold of a street sign and throws it at one of the trash monsters, landing a solid hit that actually does some real damage. But the toxic air around him is starting to take its toll. He knows he can't keep this up for long. Seeing him struggle to stand, the two trash monsters seize the opportunity and charge at him together. At the last second, Rudo snatches a piece of metal and swings it with all his strength, cutting one of the trash monsters straight through. This causes a massive explosion of garbage, leaving Rudo momentarily relieved, but his victory is short-lived. Another monster appears right in front of him. This one is huge and more terrifying than the last. With no other option, Rudo turns and flees for his life. The monster crashes into the ground, launching Rudo through the air until he lands right in front of the man who had been observing him. Rudo is confused by the man's sudden appearance, though he's still struggling to breathe because of the overwhelming stench. Without saying a word, the man picks him up, randomly kicks him across the floor, and then straps a gas mask onto Rudo's face. Initially, Rudo is angry, but soon he notices he can breathe properly now and feels he should be thankful. He looks at the man and expresses his gratitude for the assistance, though he still has some questions about their location and about the trash monsters. These are all reasonable concerns, but the enigmatic man simply tells him to keep quiet. Rudo doesn't get why the man won't answer him, so he starts shouting, demanding explanations. He was just thrown into this place and has no clue what's going on. He refuses to stay silent until the man tells him something. His yelling only angers the man, who snaps back at him. He shouts that this is one of the many toxic wastelands left behind by spheroids like Rudo, and that he would have explained in time if Rudo had just shut up. But now, because of all the noise, they'll have to face those creatures again. The man explains that those creatures are trash beasts, monsters formed from garbage that aren't affected by regular weapons and are triggered by sound. Rudo's shouting basically attracted all the nearby trash beasts. The ones in this area are especially dangerous, so the man had hoped to avoid alerting them, but now it's already too late. Energy surges from the man's arms into the umbrella. Right in front of Rudo, the umbrella transforms. As the trash monster lunges, the man slashes it to pieces with the now altered umbrella. Rudo can hardly believe how easily the man took down the creature. But with many more on the way, the fight is far from over. The man gets ready to charge, and in just moments, he takes out most of the trash beasts with ease. Rudo is stunned by what he's seeing and can't help but wonder what makes that umbrella so powerful. If he had something like that, he could finally make all those bastards in the city pay for what they did to him. One of the trash monsters starts spewing out a stream of purple slime, and the man instantly realizes it's best not to come into contact with it. He blocks the purple slime with his umbrella, then thrusts it directly into the monster's head, killing it. After finishing the job, he walks back to Rudo to see how he's doing. He removes his mask to introduce himself as Injin, a cleaner, but instantly regrets it. The stench in the air is still unbearable. Moments later, Rudo collapses from exhaustion due to the injuries he sustained earlier. While he's unconscious, a memory from his past with Ricto. Back when Rudo was a child, he came home one day completely covered in mud. Ricto, seeing the state he was in, asked what had happened. Rudo explained that a group of kids had shoved him into the dirt. He simply explained to them that objects can become alive if you care for them long enough, as a soul might eventually inhabit them. However, the children just laughed and began teasing him afterward. Rudo had heard this tale from Ricto, so he feels guilty that sharing it caused trouble. However, Ricto does believe that objects can possess souls. This excites Rudo, who eagerly asks if that means everything in the room has a soul too. Ricto responds that anything can have a soul, even the gloves Rudo is wearing, as long as he truly values them. Later on, Rudo wakes up to find Injin dragging him across the floor. He starts shouting, demanding to know why he's been chained up. Injin calmly explains that Rudo is still a complete stranger, and there's no way he'd take someone unknown back to his base without taking some safety measures first. Rudo struggles and demands that Injin release him, insisting he needs to return to the city immediately. But Injin explains that's not possible. What Rudo calls the city is known as the sphere down here, and it constantly shifts position in the sky, making it hard to locate, so reaching it would be impossible anyway. There are other complications too, but the bottom line is that Rudo is stuck here for now, so he might as well accept it and stop making a fuss. But Rudo won't back down. He's determined to make those jerks in the sphere pay no matter what. Injin had said he was stuck for now, which means there must be a way back up eventually. Rudo demands answers, pressing Injin to explain everything about this place and how to escape. He warns that he won't stop irritating Injin until he gets the info he wants. Injin is getting tired of Rudo's non-stop shouting, so he tells him that if he's that eager to learn what this place is really like, then he's about to get a real-world lesson. Injin keeps dragging Rudo along until they reach an abandoned gas station with a couple of trucks parked out front. Without another word, Injin drops Rudo off, wishes him good luck, and leaves him there to figure things out on his own. At that moment, Rudo notices several men watching him, all looking stunned by his appearance. They find his clothing odd and start wondering if he might be a spherite. To confirm their suspicions, they ask Rudo where he came from. Rudo tells them he fell from the place they call the sphere. The moment he says that, all men rip off their masks in shock. They've never encountered a living spherite before. The group struggles to accept that someone from the sphere could survive such a fall, but Rudo's battered face makes it hard to doubt his story. Annoyed by the strangers touching him, Rudo moves away. The men quickly apologize for their rudeness, explaining that they rarely encounter anyone like him. They just got a little carried away in their curiosity. The leader notices Rudo's discomfort in the chains and offers to adjust them for him. For a moment, Rudo thinks the guy might actually be decent, until things take a turn. Instead of freeing him, they shackle him in the back of their truck, laughing at how foolish it was for Rudo to trust a bunch of strangers he knows nothing about. As they secure the chains, the leader warns the others to handle Rudo with care. After all, they wouldn't want to ruin their merchandise. Spherite parts are highly valuable in this place, with eyes, fingers, and even clothes fetching top prices. But the leader never dreamed they'd get their hands on a living, breathing spherite. The man figures Rudo must be confused about why spherite parts are in such demand. He explains it plainly. Everyone on the surface hates spherites. For generations, they've done nothing but dump their waste down here. Endless mountains of trash that poison the air and warp the land. Worse yet, that filth breeds monsters. The way the leader sees it, spherites have been slowly killing people for years, drowning them in poison and filth. Once word gets out that Rudo's one of them, people won't just want him dead, they'll make it hurt. Not that the leader cares. Whether Rudo's tortured or torn limb from limb, he'll still turn a profit selling him. But before anything else, the leader decides to take some personal revenge first. He forces handfuls of rotting garbage into Rudo's mouth, thinking that Rudo probably never tasted real suffering before. But as he shoves another fistful of waste down Rudo's throat, Rudo sinks his teeth into his fingers and tears the flesh clean off the bone. The leader recoils in pain, but Rudo continues to chew the flesh and even swallows it. Back in the slums, Rudo had to survive by eating scraps like this constantly. For him, nothing is different now. The prejudice remains the same, no matter where Rudo ends up. People will always find an excuse to treat him as worthless. He's had enough. He tears himself free from the chains, and at this point, Rudo loses all control. The only thing driving him now is the urge to kill. From a cliff nearby, Injin has been observing everything, and he's genuinely impressed by what Rudo's potential. Rudo remembers Rikto's words that if you take care of something long enough, it will eventually awaken a soul. As he reaches out and grabs the chain floating, it suddenly turns red, leaving the thugs stunned. In this world, rare individuals like Injin exist, those who can bring life into objects and unlock their true potential. Rudo is one of those people. The chain in Rudo's hand transforms, making the thugs hesitant to attack. But the leader quickly reminds them that even if Rudo is a giver, without the chain, he's powerless. Motivated by that, they manage to knock the chain out of his hand. Still, that doesn't slow Rudo down. He grabs a tire and uses it to pummel every last one of them. The only one left standing is the leader, and he's completely helpless against Rudo. With no other option, he starts hurling insults non-stop. But all that does is fuel Rudo's rage even more. He's just about to finish the guy off when, at the very last moment, Injin steps in and stops him. That's when Rudo finally comes to his senses, and right after, the tire he'd been using disintegrates into dust. Rudo is completely confused about what just happened or how he managed to pull it off, but he suspects his gloves had something to do with it. Injin says sorry for leaving him in that situation, explaining that he needed to find out what Rudo could really do. Now that it's clear Rudo is a giver, Injin makes him an offer. He'll answer any of Rudo's questions, but in return, Rudo has to join him and the other cleaners. But Rudo doesn't trust him, so he refuses his offer on the spot. Injin brings Rudo to the hospital due to the severity of his injuries and gets him treated by a doctor. While there, Injin tells one of his teammates that he's found a naturally gifted kid to add to their team. Rudo protests, shouting that he never agreed to join, but Injin replies that he doesn't really have a say. He won't survive out there alone. The doctor also starts scolding Rudo, calling him reckless for going into no man's land alone. He's shocked Rudo even survived after breathing in so much toxic air and says he should be thankful Injin came to his rescue. Just seeing Rudo's face is getting on his nerves, so he tells him to pay the bill and leave. Afterward, Injin covers the doctor's fee, and the two of them head out together. Rudo truly appreciates everything Injin is doing for him, but he insists he can't join his team. He needs to return to the sphere to get his revenge. He doesn't have time to hang around down here picking through garbage. Injin tells Rudo he's welcome to try asking around for a way back up to the sphere, but first, he should understand a few things. Down in the ground, everyone despises spherites, and if people discover Rudo is one, he's done for. Plus, nothing comes free here. Nobody's just going to hand him information, so wandering around asking questions won't get him anywhere. Inside the city, Injin grabs some burgers for Rudo, and the two sit down at a nearby table. Rudo is thoroughly enjoying his meal. He's even a bit shocked because he always pictured the pit as a complete wasteland, but now that he's actually here, he realizes it's just like any other city, just with a lot more garbage lying around. Injin decides to fill Rudo in on how things work down here. He explains that trash often carries traces of emotional energy known as anima. Sometimes, that anima builds up and forms into a single massive entity, which is how trash beasts like the ones Rudo fought are born. These creatures attack humans on sight, though they usually stay near the dump zones, so city folks rarely encounter them. Still, every now and then, one of them shows up and causes chaos in the city. On top of that, taking taking down trash beasts isn't simple. You have to destroy their cores, and that requires special gear like Injin's umbrella or Rudo's gloves. These might look like normal items, but if they're treated with enough care over time, anima can inhabit them, turning them into powerful tools for fighting trash beasts. Only a few people can extract anima from these vital instruments. They're known as givers, and as luck would have it, Rudo is one of them. Injin explains that he's a cleaner, part of a group that specializes in eliminating trash beasts. They're always in need of givers, so he's offering Rudo a job on his team. Rudo demands to know if Injin will actually tell him how to return to the sphere in exchange for working together. Injin admits he has no clue how to reach the sphere. He only lied earlier to make sure Rudo would hear him out. Rudo is furious that Injin tricked him, but Injin shrugs it off, saying his boss knows way more about what goes on down here, so if anyone can help Rudo get back to the sphere, it's him. Still, Rudo feels frustrated that he now has to go through Injin's boss just for a chance to possibly get back there. Just then, Injin receives a call and says he needs to step away to handle something quickly. Before leaving, he hands Rudo a bag of money and tells him he can spend it however he likes while he's gone. Rudo is stunned by the gesture and questions if it's really okay for him to accept it. Injin reassures him, saying it's no big deal after all, it's the money he made from selling Rudo's clothes. Rudo hadn't really noticed until now, but his clothes are indeed gone, and he's furious that Injin sold them without asking. However, Injin argues that he was actually helping him out, since wearing clothes from the sphere around here would only attract the wrong kind of attention. Before Rudo can shout at him, he walks away. But while Rudo is distracted, a cat suddenly leaps down, grabs the money from the table, and runs away. Rudo immediately takes off after it, chasing it down the alley it disappeared into. The cat is too quick. Rudo knows he won't catch it empty-handed. To even the odds, he snatches a stick nearby, using it to trap the feline. But in his haste, he doesn't notice the stick has an owner, and he's furious. He accuses Rudo of stealing from him, but Rudo is completely confused. He doesn't recall taking anything. The man points to the stick in Rudo's hand, saying that's what he's talking about, but Rudo is baffled that something as ordinary and useless as a stick could matter so much to someone. The guy snatches the stick from Rudo's hands and tells him it's not a dumb object. It's not something you can take without serious consequences. He then activates the vital instrument and says he's going to teach Rudo a lesson about respect. Slamming the stick into the ground in front of him, he warns Rudo that being a talented giver doesn't mean you can take whatever you want. Rudo asks how the man knows who he is. He introduces himself as Zanka, one of the cleaners, and explains that Injin already filled him in on Rudo and asked Zanka to teach him how to use his gloves. Injin clearly has high expectations for Rudo, but he's still far from reaching his full potential, especially if he still needs to learn something as simple as not taking things that don't belong to him. Rudo attempts to explain that he wasn't stealing the stick. He only wanted to use it to catch the cat that had taken his money. However, Zanka refuses to listen to his justifications. He snaps at Rudo, saying that if he believes it's acceptable to take others' belongings, he must have had a horrible father. But when Zanka insults Recto, he goes too far, and Rudo's eyes blaze with fury. At that moment, Rudo remembers a lesson Recto once taught him, that anger only fuels conflict, and people rarely listen when emotions run high. Sometimes, stepping back and seeing things from the other person's point of view can lead to a calmer resolution. With this in mind, Rudo chooses to apply that wisdom now. He tries to see the situation from Zanka's point of view. Zanka is furious because he believes Rudo attempted to steal his treasured stick, and Rudo understands that feeling. He'd be just as upset if someone tried to take his gloves. With that in mind, he offers Zanka a sincere apology. The apology works surprisingly well. Zanka powers down his weapon and tells Rudo he's ready to move on. He even says sorry for threatening him earlier, admitting that even if he was upset as Rudo's mentor, he should have kept his cool. Rudo is shocked at how quickly things calmed down after he apologized. Without the anger, Zanka seems like a completely different person. Zanka reaches out to help Rudo up and asks what his vital instrument is. Rudo admits he's fairly certain it's his gloves, but hasn't figured out how to activate them consciously yet. As Zanka begins explaining how vital instruments function, Rudo barely listens, too distracted by how much friendlier Zanka appears when he smiles. He wonders if this is what Recto was talking about when he said, "He'll look better with a smile on your face," and he wants to try it for himself. He's been practicing for a while, so he should be able to smile properly by now. But when Rudo tries to smile, it even looks worse than it was before. Zanka stares in confusion. Whatever expression Rudo Rudo is making. It's nothing like a smile. Annoyed, he assumes Rudo is making fun of him, despite his own effort to be friendly. Rudo insists he's genuinely attempting to smile, but with his face twisted like that, it's nearly impossible to take him seriously. On top of that, Zenko really doesn't like Rudo's attitude regarding the work the cleaners do because they are out here every day risking their lives to save others. But Rudo is probably just doing this for some stupid reason. Rudo recalls Rikto's last words, urging him to change the world, and it infuriates him that Zeno would mock his goal when he truly means it. Zanka admits he tried to give Rudo a fair chance, but he just can't bring himself to get along with him, so he's finished pretending to be nice. Rudo is tired of holding back, so he picks up a piece of junk and declares he's going to beat the hell out of Zanka. Zanka is stunned to see Rudo fighting with something other than his gloves, and finally gets what Engine meant by calling Rudo a natural. Still, even though he finds it impressive, he believes that raw talent like Rudo's is worthless without the proper skills to support it. At that moment, Rudo notices that Zanka no longer has his stick. When he glances up, he sees it flying right at him. He dodges just in time, but Zanka quickly closes the distance and begins to overwhelm him with relentless pressure. Rudo eventually spots a chance to strike back, but his counter only leaves a small cut on Zanka's cheek. Zanka throws Rudo to the ground, mocking him as a worthless giver. But then he feels something on his cheek, and to his shock, after sniffing it, he realizes it's poop. Looking at Rudo, he notices that the weapon Rudo grabbed earlier was a plunger and one with lots of poop. Rudo is completely clueless about why Zanka is so panicked, but he's not about to back down. So even as Zanka desperately pleads for a timeout, Rudo keeps pursuing him, convinced that this strange plunger must be some kind of deadly weapon. Rudo leaps into the air with pride and swings the plunger down on Zanka, spreading poop all over his clothes. Sometime later, Injin shows up to see how Rudo is doing, only to find him next to Zanka completely covered in filth. On their way, after Rudo explains everything, Injin bursts into uncontrollable laughter. He never imagined that Rudo and Zanka's first encounter would involve Rudo throwing poop at him. Zanka is basically the definition of a spoiled rich kid, so being hit with poop was a total humiliation. Rudo had no clue he was throwing poop the whole time, so now he feels embarrassed. He finds it gross, even by his own standards. Still, Injin sees the whole situation as a good way for them to get to know each other. He reassures Rudo that Zanka is the most talented giver when it comes to handling vital instruments, so he'll make an excellent teacher. Zanka feels flattered that Injin holds him in such high regard. As he's enjoying the praise, Rudo spots a pair of boots in the back of the car. Injin casually says it's just Rio. Injin didn't know she was there, so she explains she just wanted to get a look at the new guy herself. Rudo feels a bit anxious since he's barely ever talked to girls before, but then Rio starts messing with his hair, saying she likes the color. Meanwhile, Injin casually mentions they're on their way to the cleaner's HQ. Rudo and the other givers finally arrive at cleaner headquarters. He gets down from the car and can't help but stare at the massive building in front of him. They enter the building, and Injin calls Rudo over to introduce him to Semiyu, the receptionist. They usually have her take a look at anyone who newly joins the cleaners. Injin is about to tell Rudo what Semiyu's ability is, but she chooses to demonstrate it by stabbing two flies mid-air with just a fork. She tells Rudo it's a pleasure to meet him. Injin already told her quite a lot about him, including how he got here and where he came from, but even with that, she still wants to take a look at his potential. Injin tells Rudo that the cool glasses Semiyu is wearing are actually her vital instrument. They enhance her kinetic vision, allowing her to see what someone is truly made of when she focuses hard enough. Rudo is surprised to learn that vital instruments can be used like that. Then, as Semiyu's eyes and glasses light up, she takes a deep look into Rudo, and that's when she sees something truly shocking. Semiyu gives Injin a breakdown analysis. She saw that Rudo is already quite athletic, so there'll be no need for him to take that kind of training. On top of that, it's clear that he has a good relationship with his vital instrument. However, his use of it is still quite unstable. Rudo will need to practice consistently to be able to draw his power on command. Finally, she mentions that he has a poop on his neck. Injin bursts into laughter the moment he hears that. That's what he gets for playing around in all that poop. With that out of the way, he thanks Semiyu for her help and says he's going to take Rudo to meet the boss. Before leaving, Injin glances back at Semiyu, aware that she's hiding something else. As they head toward the meeting room, Injin explains that there are about 100 cleaners in total, including combatants, sentinels, and supporters. Their work requires constant travel, so it's rare for all all of them to be at headquarters at the same time. Injin suggests that Rudo take some time to meet his fellow cleaners. He figures it won't be too hard, especially since there shouldn't be many around, but when he opens the dining room, he's surprised to find it packed with rugged-looking cleaners, way more than he expected. So, he quietly closes the door and says he'll introduce him later. Shortly after, they arrive in front of the boss's room. Rudo is just about to open the door and ask the boss how to get back to Sphere, but Injin stops him before he gets the chance to. He explains to Rudo that in this world, information is a very valuable commodity, so it doesn't come for free. Injin suggests Rudo tells the boss he's going to be working as a cleaner in exchange for the information. When Injin met Rudo for the first time, he shared information about his own vital instrument because he felt it was necessary. For that reason, he doesn't recommend asking about the boss's vital instrument. No one at headquarters knows what it is or how powerful it might be, but even so, all the cleaners follow the boss's orders. That loyalty comes not just from the boss's skill, but also from the ability to inspire trust. With all this said, Rudo places his hand on the door handle and anxiously opens the door, but he's surprised to see that the office is empty. Injin is shocked to see that as well. That's when Semiyu comes up from behind and tells them she forgot to mention that the boss is off on a business trip and won't be back for a while. Injin is quite disappointed hearing that the boss just left them without giving them any notice or warning ahead of time. Looks like Rudo is going to be here for a while waiting for the boss to return. In the meantime, Ryo asks Rudo whether he wants to come and watch her work. He can't officially join the cleaners until the boss is back, so she figures he might as well kill the time. Ryo's asking him to tag along mostly because she wants to know more about him and what he's capable of. Afterwards, Semiyu explains the client's request. A town near the polluted zone is reporting small trash beasts approaching their barricade. They want a cleaning to be done just to be safe. After hearing that, Rudo is confused by what she meant by polluted zone. This was something Injin was supposed to explain to Rudo initially, but he just referred to it as the dump area to make it easier. Semiyu sighs and says she's going to explain it to him. Turns out that the ground is divided into safe zones that support human life, and garbage-filled polluted zones where the trash beasts live. The location Rudo came down in was a very dangerous polluted zone known as No Man's Land. There are 6 confirmed No Man's Lands in total on the surface. Those zones are so dangerous that most people would die almost immediately after landing into one because they're crawling with trash beasts that even some givers struggle with. In other words, Rudo was just really lucky that Injin came across him when he did. She's even curious as to what Injin was doing out in No Man's Land all by himself, but Injin just says he was bored and wanted to stretch his legs a bit. That aside, Semiyu hands Rudo a gas mask and tells him to make sure he wears it as much as possible in polluted zones because breathing in that toxic air could make him really sick. In No Man's Land, he could die without a mask in about 15 minutes, depending on how concentrated the air is. About 10 minutes later, they all suit up and are ready to begin their mission. Ryo tells Rudo that this is going to be a really easy job, so he should be watching really closely. As they head out on the mission, Rudo starts to think back and realizes that this is actually how he pictured the pit back when he was still up in the sphere. Thing is, he never expected there to be people living inside of it so freely. With those thoughts in mind, Rudo wonders whether the people up there know about this underground world or not. Still, when he stops to look around, the polluted zone looks a lot like a giant treasure trove. He really wants to take it all back to fix it up. Rudo realizes there's an entire half of the team he hasn't met yet, so he asks Ryo who they are. She explains that they're also cleaners as well, but are known as supporters. They don't have any special powers, but they still play a very important part of the team and help them with what they do. One of them walks up to Rudo and offers to shake his hand, but at the moment their hands lock. The guy squeezes Rudo's hand really tightly, causing him to wince in pain. Turns out the guy he just shook has godly grip strength. He can use his bare hands to smash through the trash beast's outer shells. Seeing all this, Rudo isn't sure if he'll be able to keep up with all this energy. He figures that even if it's an easy job, he would need to make sure he watches and learns. Just then, they get alerted of incoming trash beasts. Rudo thought it would be only one, but he's shocked the moment he sees an entire herd emerge from the shadows. Ryo urges him to calm down. These types of trash monsters are slow and weak. It gets demonstrated as the trash beasts find it difficult to cause any damage to the barricade. Rudo observes and agrees that these beasts seem a lot milder than the ones he faced when he first got here. Just then, a second wave of bigger trash beasts charges toward the barricade and hits it with a lot more force than the first one. Rudo immediately starts to panic because this new wave of monsters isn't as weak as the ones before. Rudo suggests they call for reinforcements, but Rio tells him to calm down because they're only a slightly tougher version of those small ones. They're a bit stronger, so she figures they would be the perfect training for a newbie like Rudo. She further says the quicker they round these monsters up, the sooner they'll get to go home to throw Rudo a welcome party. Rudo can do nothing but just stare at Rio. How can she be so relaxed in a life-threatening situation like this? Rio tells him that if he ever wants to survive in this world, he's going to need to learn how to keep his cool. Just then, one of the trash beasts reveals its true power by breaking through the fence, and even Rio is shocked. She realizes this monster is a lot stronger than she expected, so it won't really be the best teaching material for Rudo. She walks forward and plans on taking it down all on her own. Rio kind of enjoys this feeling because a tough opponent like this sure does get her blood pumping. Her vital instrument is a pair of scissors. First, the scissors glow a bright green before Rio tosses them into the air and transforms them into something larger. She then swings them around and takes out the first wave of trash beasts in a single strike. Rudo's jaw drops as he watches her fighting style. He notices that she wields her weapon with her feet instead of her hands. Gris explains that her vital instrument is called the Ripper, and this is what makes Rio special and sets her apart from the rest. That aside, Gris reminds Rudo not to let his guard down, even though he's just observing. But that's when one of the trash beasts sneaks up from behind and is about to charge into Rudo. At the last moment, Gris steps in, uses his superhuman strength to stop the beast, and then tosses it over to Rio so she can finish it off. Watching this, Rudo begins to understand how the cleaners operate. The supporters don't have powers, so they can't defeat the trash beasts on their own, but they can still disable them and set things up for the giver to land the final blow. It doesn't take long for them to defeat all the level 1 trash beasts. Now, Rio turns her attention to the final boss. The supporters are on their way to give Rio some assistance on the front lines, but that's when one of the level 1 trash beasts sneaks up and trips one of the supporters, causing him to fall to the floor. He's about to get eaten by the beast, but Rudo jumps in and blocks it at the last second. He doesn't just want to be a burden to them, he's doing everything he can to be helpful. This moment gives him an adrenaline rush, so he turns the pole he's using into a vital instrument. The shape of the pole changes into a spiked barrier, but unfortunately, Rudo still doesn't know how to control his power, so all he can do is hold his weapon and stare at the beast. It doesn't take long before the trash beast breaks through, but Rio swoops in at the final moment to save him. Rio is impressed to see that Rudo instinctively rushed in to save one of the supporters. That's a quality of a good cleaner. After that, the supporter admit that he got careless and thank both Rudo and Rio for saving him. Gris then asks Rio whether she was able to defeat the final boss. Rio explains that she tried slicing it in half, but that didn't work. She even struck it several more times with her vital instrument, but it still wouldn't go down. It's kind of strange to see a trash monster that's immune to attacks from a vital instrument, but Rio isn't all that concerned about it. It's still a trash beast after all, so she just plans on dicing it up until it can't move. Hearing that, the supporters wish Rio good luck and say they're heading back to headquarters to report what happened. Wasting no time, Rio leaps into the air and starts slashing the trash beast all over its body. The monster screams in pain and tries to shake her off, but she manages to hold her ground. She cuts off all the tentacles on its head and spots a weak point, a small patch glowing orange, but before she can strike it, the monster regrows its tentacles and goes berserk, launching an attack that makes the ground crumble beneath Rudo. As Rudo falls to the ground, he thinks about how he always said he'd avenge Rigto's death and get back at all the jerks in Sphere, but now he can't even control his power and ends up being a burden. Just as he's about to fall into the pit, Gris catches him in time and pulls him out, throwing Rudo over his shoulder. Gris runs as fast as he can back to base. He doesn't know why Rudo froze up at the last moment, but he gives him one piece of advice. If you have a goal, run toward it with everything you've got and achieve it while you still can. Meanwhile, Rio managed to catch the trash beast while it was distracted, so she uses her scissors to strike through its core. It then crumbles to the ground, signifying that it's been defeated. Rudo and Gris rush back to see if the monster was really defeated, but when they get there, they're shocked to see Rio holding a paper cutter. They learn that this paper cutter was a vital instrument that had been powering the trash beast the entire time. Gris notes it's not even possible for a trash beast to possess one. Elsewhere, one of the men who tried to sell Rudo's body parts wakes up from a trance, confused about where he is. In front of him stands a strange-looking man man in a hood, who asks him where the spherate kid is. In the middle of the night, Zanka wakes up for a quick bathroom break. On the way there, he hears loud noises from the cafeteria and decides to check it out. Inside, he's surprised to see the cleaners have thrown a party. He spots Rio, walks towards her, and asks what's going on. Rio says it's just a small welcoming party for Rudo. Zanka doubts everyone came for Rudo and figures they're really here for the free drinks. But Rio says that's fine. It's a good chance to relax now that the boss is away. Zanka looks around and notices Rudo, but he's clearly not enjoying his own party. Rio explains he's upset because his vital instrument failed during yesterday's job. He's been in a bad mood ever since. Speaking of yesterday, Zanka heard they fought a strange trash beast and asks for details. Rio says it wasn't like anything they'd seen before. Its core wasn't anima, it was an object, which she thinks was a vital instrument. The idea of a trash beast being created and powered by a vital instrument really worries her. She says she has no idea how to handle it, and her mood turns sad. Zanka starts to feel bad for her, until her expression changes and says she just left that job to the higher ranked members and came back here to eat and relax. Zanka rolls his eyes, realizing she hasn't changed one bit. Meanwhile, Rudo is still sulking over his poor performance in battle. That's when someone approaches him. He introduces himself as Gris Rubian, one of the supporters from yesterday's battle. Gris tells Rudo he actually did great. He even protected Follow from being eaten by a trash beast. Rudo isn't sure who Follow is, so Gris explains he's the young supporter with goggles. Even so, Rudo still isn't satisfied. Back then, he couldn't control his power when needed, so Gris and Rio had to step in. That's how he always was at Sphere, always losing his cool and making mistakes, with Regto cleaning up after him. He wants to get back to Sphere quickly, but feels he hasn't improved at all. He keeps calling himself a worthless piece of trash. After hearing all this, Gris simply says, "Thank you." Rudo lifts his head in confusion. Gris explains that most people, when they see supporters like them, just call them powerless weaklings. Even some cleaners once thought that about them, but Rudo never treated him that way. Gris then points toward Follow and says he joined the cleaners to help clear out trash beasts. But everyone knows you can't kill a trash beast without powers. That's why Follow is building his own vital instrument, hoping to become a giver one day. Follow has vowed to stay a supporter even if he becomes a giver, just to prove his haters wrong. He's working hard to make that happen. Gris tells Rudo to forget about chasing strength just to be what others expect. Instead, he asks what Rudo has always wanted to do. Before he came to the surface, before all the bad things happened, was there something he always dreamed of? Rudo thinks about it, but can't give a clear answer. Gris tells him to remember his original goal and return to his first principles. If he can do that, his true path should appear. As Gris pats his head, Rudo starts getting emotional, almost tearing up, when Injin suddenly lands on his shoulder. Injin notices Rudo's been quiet all night and asks if he's eaten. Rio cuts in, warning that if he doesn't eat soon, the others will take his food, even though it's his party. Zanka tells Rio she's not the one to talk since she's eaten more than anyone here. Gris and the others invite Rudo to try the food before it's gone. Slowly, Rudo stands and follows them. A minute later, he's stuffing his face with pizza when a cleaner blasts loud music, grabs a spray can, and starts painting the wall. Injin tells Rudo this guy's called Gob. He never lets anyone tell him what he can or can't do. As he sprays, other cleaners complain about the awful smell, but Gob ignores them. Meanwhile, in the underground lair, the man who tried to kidnap Rudo is being tortured by an unknown figure. The man begs for his life, saying he's told him everything. The figure realizes he's no longer useful and kills him instantly. His next goal, track down Rudo, the spherate giver he's heard about. Elsewhere, Semiyu gets an important work call. Minutes later, she gathers the cleaners and announces they've just received a new request. Before Semiyu can give the mission details, Zanka interrupts and asks why Rudo is here. He knows he's supposed to be Rudo's trainer, but thought that would happen after Rudo officially joined the team. Rudo isn't a real cleaner yet. Semiyu explains she called him because the mission is connected to him. She explains that a merchant was attacked by a trash beast while crossing a polluted zone. The creature stole the merchant's valuable cargo. Their request is simple: kill the beast and retrieve the cargo, which is a living person who came down from Sphere. Rudo gasps in shock. Semiyu adds that finding two living spherates so close in time is rare, so she figured he'd want to know. It might even give Rudo a clue on how to return to Sphere. Gris guesses Rudo must have mixed feelings, so he says it's entirely up to him whether he comes or not. Rudo knows he still can't use his power properly, meaning he could be a burden that needs protecting, but the chance of getting a clue to return home home is more important, so he decides he'll go. Semiyu says she originally planned to send in Jin with them, but he had another job, so he trusted the mission to Zanka. She believes they'll be fine as long as Zanka goes too. With everything explained, Zanka takes the lead as they set out. Rudo walks beside Gris and notices he doesn't carry a weapon. Gris says he has a knife for self-defense, but usually fights barehanded because that's what he's used to. Follow joins in, telling Rudo that Gris carries a special talisman he prays to every time, asking for everyone to return safely. Embarrassed, Gris tells Follow to shut up. He shows Rudo the talisman, saying it's just a cheap trinket he bought in a shop. He thinks it's fine. Praying never hurt anyone. That's when a strange-looking woman sneaks up from behind. She says she's the merchant who hired them and will guide them to the trash beast's lair. Hearing she's the client, Rudo quickly bombards her with questions about the spherate she found. She explains she was transporting her cargo when she stumbled upon them and took them in. Unfortunately, they were unconscious, so she never got to ask them anything. The woman says she's worried about the spherate, which is why she's so eager to get them back from the trash beast. Rudo starts to suspect she planned to sell the spherate, but she denies it, insisting she was genuinely concerned. With that, they continue their journey. Zanka doubts the spherate is still alive. Trash beasts attack humans on sight. Still, he finds it strange for a trash beast to kidnap someone instead of killing them. Things have been changing lately, and it doesn't sit right with him. The woman points to a nearby building, saying the trash beast ran inside with the spherate. A few moments later, the cleaners enter carefully, staying on guard. Soon, they spot someone tied up ahead and assume it's the spherate, but then the woman starts acting strangely, pushing them toward the center of the room. Once everyone is there, they realize the hostage is just a doll. The woman signals someone to hurry and capture the spherate kid, then backs away. Just then, the floor collapses, and the cleaners fall 2 levels underground. The woman points at Rudo, declaring she's trapped the spherate giver. Zanka instantly realizes they've been set up. 2 figures carrying glowing purple lanterns emerge from the darkness, announcing they're here for Rudo. Gris knows Rudo has no idea who they are, so he quickly explains. They're raiders. They began as common thieves, but in recent years their methods have become more brutal. There are even rumors they've been involved in shady experiments. Gris warns they must be cautious. Every raider is a giver. He orders the support team to secure an escape route while he and Follow protect Rudo. Before leaving, Gris asks Zanka if he can handle the fight. Zanka says yes and tells Gris and the others to evacuate fast. As they run toward the exit, Rudo asks why they're retreating. He thinks even he could take on those raiders, but Gris tells him these aren't like the kidnappers he first met here. Right now, their top priority is getting out safely, since they don't know the raiders' powers. Hearing that, Rudo can't help feeling like a useless burden who can't protect himself. Meanwhile, Zanka talks with the raiders, saying he's not surprised by the ambush. He knew it was only a matter of time before they tracked Rudo down. He assumes they just want to sell Rudo for a high price, but the raiders say they're not planning to sell him. Instead, they want to learn more about the sphere, and they figure asking a living spherate is the fastest way. They're especially curious how he crossed the border without dying. Zanka couldn't care less about the sphere, so if this was all a trap for Rudo, he figures that means there's no trash beast to fight. The raiders admit there might not be any trash beasts, but there are several mud marionettes. From the strange old woman to the collapsing floor, Zanka starts putting the pieces together. Suspecting this is one of the raiders' powers, Zanka activates his staff and easily takes down the mud dummies at first, but things aren't as simple as he thought. One of the raiders is hiding among them, disguised as a dummy, and lands surprise attack on him from behind. The tactic works. Zanka takes several consecutive hits. The raiders believe he's no match for them, since cleaners are used to fighting trash monsters, not humanoids. On top of that, she uses her power to turn parts of the floor into mud, trapping Zanka without him realizing it. She warns him not to move much. The more he moves, the deeper he'll sink. She tells him he's the only one who can stand against her, and once he's dead, it's over. She keeps running her mouth until Zanka gets annoyed, telling her to shut up. Her sneaky tactics are really starting to piss him off. At first, he thought the woman used her shovel to control the mud while her partner attacked, but he realizes he was wrong. He also notices she's wearing something like snowshoes. He's heard they make it easier to walk on unstable ground. He figures she's the partner because she can move freely on mud. Zanka mocks them, saying he's never seen such a perfect couple. Both raiders get angry, but it doesn't matter. They may have more fighting experience, but Zanka knows his vital instrument inside and out and believes that makes him superior. Confident, he strikes his vital instrument into the ground, sending out a wide shockwave that lets him tell the real enemy from the dummies. He charges forward and defeats both raiders in one smooth motion. The mud dummies collapse, and Zanka thinks it's over, until a much stronger opponent suddenly sneaks up from behind. At the same time, Rudo and the others keep running away from danger. As Rudo looks back, he doesn't hear anything anymore, so he starts to wonder how Zanka is holding up. Just then, the supporters suddenly come to a stop because they've finally reached the exit safely. Gris manages to force the door open, and when he looks inside, he notices they won't be able to use their chokers down there, so he tells the others to head up top and call for backup. In the meantime, Gris says he'll go back to check on Zanka, but before he leaves, he freezes when he hears footsteps coming toward them. Gris immediately assumes it's Zanka returning from the fight, so he calls out, asking if he's hurt. Instead, a raider with dreadlocks named Jabber steps out from the darkness and gives them a cold stare. He studies Rudo's face and body for a moment, then confirms he's the spherate giver. Right after that, Jabber leaps to the wall behind them and smashes the exit with his bare hands, blocking the escape route. As the dust settles, Gris realizes this is bad. There are way more raiders than he expected. Jabber admits he overslept and came late, but even then, he didn't think they'd make it this far. Gris demands to know where Zanka is, but Jabber ignores him and keeps his attention on Rudo. He tells Rudo to come with him because someone very important wants to meet him. Then he rips off Rudo's gas mask, saying there are no trash beasts around here, so he doesn't need it. Rudo angrily demands to know what happened to Zanka. Jabber replies that he didn't kill him, only knocked him down, since he prefers to go easy when the opponent is strong. However, he injected Zanka with his venom, so now Zanka is lying there paralyzed. After saying that, Jabber summons his vital instrument and orders Rudo to follow him. That's when the supporters launch a combined attack, but Jabber easily counters it. Afterward, Gris steps in front of Rudo, boldly declaring that he'll do whatever it takes to protect his team, even if it costs him his life. Hearing this, Jabber realizes Gris is one of the supporters. To him, supporters are nothing more than weaklings pretending to be heroes. Jabber then draws his vital instrument and gets ready to strike. Rudo shouts at Gris to move aside, insisting he can handle Jabber himself. He keeps yelling, but Gris doesn't respond and refuses to move. The next moment, Jabber coldly declares that Gris is already dead because he has just stabbed him in the stomach with his claws. Rudo's eyes widen in fear as he watches Gris's blood-stained talisman fly through the air. In a flashback to when Rudo was still living in Sphere, Recto had just returned home from a long day of work, only to find Rudo banging his head against the wall. Alarmed, Recto rushed over to stop him, and when he did, he noticed Rudo's forehead covered in blood. Rudo collapsed onto the ground, telling Recto that since he was told not to hurt others, he thought it was better to just hurt himself instead. Hearing this, Recto sighed and firmly told him that wasn't okay. He asked Rudo what could have possibly driven him to do something like this, but Rudo couldn't give him an answer. All he could describe was an angry feeling that rose inside him, and the strange part was that he had no clear reason for being angry. Listening closely, Recto realized that Rudo had convinced himself he was worthless ever since he was abandoned as a baby. Recto figured that miserable emptiness must have slowly turned into anger over time. With that in mind, Recto stood up and told Rudo they should go outside together once his wounds were treated. Recto explained that one of the reasons Rudo felt so empty was because he hadn't found what he liked yet. That day, Recto wanted them to go out and experience new things together, little by little, until Rudo could discover what made him happy. Over time, Recto said, Rudo's empty room would be filled with things he liked, but when the day came that Rudo wanted to bring a girl home, Recto asked him to give a warning first. Just as planned, the two of them spent the afternoon trying different sports and activities. At the end of the day, Recto admitted that while Rudo showed some interest, they still hadn't found the activity that truly clicked with him. Still, Recto reminded him this was only the first day, and there would be many more to explore. Just then, Rudo's attention shifted when he saw a man responsibly throwing away his trash. Rudo immediately ran over, dug through the dumpster, and pulled something out. Dropping to his knees, he began to cry as he held a slightly roughed up mask that had been thrown away, even though it wasn't broken. Recto asked what was wrong, and Rudo explained that while the mask was a little damaged, it still had plenty of life left in it. Watching this, Recto realized this was more than just Rudo's imagination. He genuinely saw value in things others considered worthless. Reliving that core memory now awakened Rudo's true power. Holding Gris's talisman, a red aura flared around him. Gris watched in shock, realizing this was the real reason Rudo couldn't use his vital instrument in the past. They had been wrong all along. Rudo's power power wasn't about turning objects into vital instruments. It was about bringing out their true and complete worth. Before their eyes, Griss's talisman transformed into a giant magical creature with a single eye at its center, fully under Rudo's control. Jabber was so amazed at the sight that he began to drool, unable to contain his excitement. Curious, he asked Rudo if that was his vital instrument and what powers it held. At that moment, Rudo looked back at Griss and realized it was Griss who had helped him awaken this power by guiding him to relive that core memory. If Griss hadn't pointed it out, Rudo knew he would still be lashing out blindly. But things were different now. He swore to prove Jabber wrong and show that everything he had been mocked for was meaningless. Jabber, however, found Rudo's anger fascinating. To him, nothing was more entertaining than facing a strong opponent. With a grin, Jabber drew his claws and said he wanted to have some fun with Rudo before dragging him back to headquarters. Meanwhile, Follow tried to stop the bleeding from Griss's wound, but he began to panic when it wouldn't stop. Even so, Griss reassured him not to worry and calmly said he would be fine. More importantly, Griss admitted that the reason Rudo couldn't use his vital instrument during their last mission was because he had been overwhelmed by too many emotions at once, clouding his true purpose. Now that Rudo had realized that purpose, Griss was certain there was nothing left to fear. At that moment, Jabber lunged at Rudo, but Rudo slipped past the attack with ease. Jabber's eyes widened in shock. He complained that this wasn't any fun and immediately unleashed a furious barrage of strikes. Yet Rudo dodged every single one. Stunned, Jabber realized none of his attacks were landing. Rudo then explained that Griss had used his talisman to pray for everyone's safety, and in return, he intended to honor that prayer with the strongest defense possible, by avoiding every attack. Hearing this, Jabber assumed Rudo's ability was some kind of power that allowed him to dodge attacks, but Rudo corrected him, saying he hadn't moved a step. It was actually Jabber who had been forced aside at the very last moment. Jabber couldn't make sense of it, so he charged in again, determined to land a finishing blow. But just before he could connect, the talisman detected his hostile movement and froze him in midair, leaving him wide open for Rudo's fist. Rudo landed a clean punch across his face, and though Jabber slid backward, he stayed on his feet. Blood dripped from his nose as his excitement grew. He had finally figured out Rudo's power. Rudo's ability was to summon that magic creature and use its eye to control the flow of movement. From there, all Rudo had to do was strike directly. Rudo reminded Jabber that he had said he wanted to play before capturing him, so Rudo declared he would keep playing until Jabber was nothing but a heap on the floor. Jabber tried a sneak attack next, but the eye detected him instantly, letting Rudo land another punch. Changing tactics, Jabber tried to confuse the talisman's eye by darting around at high speed. He even hurled heavy cement blocks at Rudo as a distraction before attempting to strike from behind. But once again, the eye detected him, and Rudo countered with a clean hit. Even as the battle turned against him, Jabber refused to back down. He charged at full speed, attacking again and again, only to be tracked by the eye every single time, and each time, Rudo's punches landed squarely. At one point, Rudo delivered a powerful punch that sent Jabber staggering back until he collapsed against a wall. Jabber chuckled softly, admitting it had been a long time since he'd taken such a solid beating. Still, he pointed out that during the fight, he had noticed something interesting about Rudo's fighting style. He explained that Rudo's vital instrument only reacted to hostile intent that was directly aimed at him. As proof, he mentioned how earlier in the battle he had thrown a piece of rubble as a smokescreen, and at that moment, he realized Rudo's vital instrument didn't respond at all, because it wasn't triggered by threats that lacked any will of their own. Rudo couldn't understand why that detail mattered so much, but Jabber grinned and went on to explain. He revealed that his right claw contained a very potent neurotoxin. Without hesitation, Jabber suddenly stabbed himself with it and then burst into maniacal laughter. He kept laughing as he taunted Rudo, saying that now he had injected himself with the neurotoxin, he would soon lose control of his own mind and body. And when that happened, how would Rudo's vital instrument handle an opponent who attacked without any conscious intent at all? In the next moment, Jabber suddenly awakens, screaming at the top of his lungs with his eyes completely white from madness. He spins into a dash attack aimed at Rudo, but Rudo narrowly dodges at the very last second. Realizing that Jabber is far stronger than before, Rudo wonders how that could even be possible. As he searches for a way to counter Jabber, Rudo glances to the side and spots Follow giving first aid to Griss. At that instant, he realizes that continuing the fight here will only put Griss and Follow in serious danger. He quickly tries to draw Jabber away from them, but Jabber immediately closes the distance and strikes strikes again. Rudo attempts to use the talisman to control his movements, but to his shock, it fails to activate. He barely manages to catch Jabber's punch with his hands and uses sheer raw strength from his vital instrument to throw him off. Unfortunately, the impact isn't enough. Jabber climbs back to his feet within seconds. Seeing this, Rudo realizes that Jabber has thrown himself into a berserk state by overdosing on his own poison. Since Griss's talisman only reacts to hostile intent, it offers no protection against Jabber in this condition. Rudo is stunned that Jabber has already figured out such a counter in such a short time. Looking at him now, Rudo realizes Jabber has become what people call a masochist. This thought brings back a childhood memory when bullies in his neighborhood mocked him, calling him a masochist because he refused to fight back. After that beating, he ran straight to Recto to ask what the word meant, only for Recto to admit he didn't know either. Back in the present, Rudo realizes he has no idea how to fight someone like Jabber in this state. Jabber charges with murderous intent, forcing Rudo to desperately dodge blow after blow. But then, Jabber winds up for an attack that Rudo knows he cannot possibly avoid. At the last moment, a vital instrument cuts through the air, intercepting the strike and saving Rudo. When Rudo looks closer, he immediately recognizes the blue staff. Turning back, he sees Zanka, glaring fiercely. Zanka tells him that he's already done more than enough, and from here on, he'll take over. Rudo rushes closer, asking how Zanka managed to survive the poison. But Zanka just replies that Rudo shouldn't underestimate him. That aside, Zanka points out that he noticed Rudo finally got his vital instrument working, and admits it looks pretty cool. But Rudo quickly warns him that the ability doesn't work on Jabber while he's in berserk mode. All he can do right now is dodge. Zanka then asks if Rudo's vital instrument is triggered by hostile intent. When Rudo confirms and asks how he knew, Zanka explains that he had been observing the fight for a while before stepping in, analyzing how the ability worked. With that, Zanka proposes a plan. Since Jabber's legs are broken and his movement is limited, they can use Rudo's weapon in a different way. He asks Rudo to let him hit him. Rudo is taken aback by this strange request, but Zanka clarifies if he strikes Rudo, it might trigger the talisman to pull him straight toward Jabber, allowing him to deliver a clean hit. And since Zanka's blue staff has longer reach than Rudo's fists, it should land before Jabber's claws can. Rudo hesitates, pointing out that if Zanka's theory is wrong, he'll just end up getting punched for nothing. Zanka shrugs, confirming that if that happens, he'll simply have to endure it. Before they can continue, their conversation is cut short as Jabber rises once again and launches a devastating attack. Both Rudo and Zanka barely manage to dodge. After that, Zanka warns Rudo not to let his claws touch him, because even the tiniest scratch would be enough to put him down for good. Rudo, however, tells Zanka to go ahead and strike him. So, as Zanka gets ready to unleash a full attack, Rudo's vital instrument immediately reacts, pushing Zanka right in front of Jabber. With perfect timing, Zanka slams his staff into Jabber's face. Both Zanka and Rudo are left speechless for a moment, shocked that it actually worked. Jabber quickly charges back at them, so Zanka goes in again to strike. The moment he does, he's instantly transported right in front of Jabber once more, allowing him to deliver a crushing overhead strike with his staff. Realizing the strategy, the two keep repeating it, using this unexpected technique to beat Jabber senseless. Just before they can land the finishing blow, the poison inside Jabber's body wears off. Zanka takes the opportunity to deliver one last downward strike, smashing Jabber into the ground. But the effort takes its toll. Zanka is so drained he can't stay on his feet. He collapses backward, groaning that his entire body aches. At the same time, Rudo's vital instrument suddenly turns to stone and crumbles in his hands. Rudo drops to his knees, staring at the dust. Watching this, Zanka realizes that the weapons Rudo creates must only exist for a limited time. Then Rudo's body suddenly seizes up. He collapses to the ground, twitching and unable to move. Zanka notices the signs right away. Rudo has been poisoned by Jabber's claw. Meanwhile, Jabber injects himself with a chemical from his own claw, instantly regaining his strength as if the fight had never even happened. Zanka stares in disbelief, unable to comprehend how Jabber can still move after everything he endured. Jabber calmly explains that the chemicals in his left claw allow him to erase pain in seconds, while the poison in his right claw only lasts about 10 minutes on him since he's built up immunity. For Zanka, however, that same poison will last around 30 minutes. To make things worse, Jabber stabs Zanka again, refreshing the dose. cleaners. Then, with Rudo trembling helplessly, Jabber picks him up and carries him away. Zenka, paralyzed, can do nothing but watch as Rudo is taken. Jabber runs with him in hand until he leaps back out of the hole he originally entered from. But once he reaches the surface, he's stunned. He's outside. That hole was supposed to lead into a building. Confused, he glances to the side and sees Rio standing at a distance. Before he can react, he gets slammed in the stomach by Injin's umbrella, forcing him to drop Rudo. Injin and the rest of the cleaners gather around, telling Jabber he's made a huge mistake. Jabber is now cornered. Injin looks at the massive hole in the ground, realizing it's so deep that even their choker comms wouldn't be able to send signals that far down. He guesses this was Jabber's plan all along, to trap the others deep below so they couldn't call for help. If Tom hadn't found a phone in the nearby town and contacted them, they never would have known. Hearing this, Tom grows emotional, worried that Gris and the others underground might already be dead. But Injin puts a hand on her shoulder, reassuring her not to worry because they're tougher than that. He then orders her to take a few members and head into the hole for a rescue mission. Rio glances at Rudo, noting that he's in better shape than expected, but Keynes immediately argues, pointing out that Rudo looks terrible and is barely even breathing. Delman, seeing Rudo's condition, explodes with rage. He turns to Jabber, vowing that he'll pay for hurting one of their own. Injin backs him up, declaring that Jabber isn't going to mess with the cleaners and get away with it. However, Jabber isn't intimidated at all. He stands back up and tells them that he has orders of his own. He's supposed to bring Rudo back with him, and there's no way he can return without completing that mission. He says this while charging up the energy of his vital instrument, just as he's about to attack. A blue-haired girl suddenly appears and hugs him tightly from behind, telling him that he's done enough and should return to base. Jabber argues, saying he's not ready to leave yet because he still hasn't secured Rudo. But the girl stays calm and keeps telling him to come home. Injin can only watch in confusion, wondering where this girl suddenly came from. Jabber keeps resisting until the girl mentions that the boss had a very big smile when his name came up. That makes him fall silent. The girl releases him after realizing he's finally willing to listen. Jabber then turns to the cleaners and says he has to leave now, as he reveals a manhole-shaped portal opening behind them. Rio notices this and is stunned. Before stepping through, Jabber looks at Rudo and says he has some real skill for a spherate. He adds that the poison he gave him won't kill him, it only knocked him out for the meantime. Jabber begins walking away, but to his surprise, Rudo suddenly calls out to him. Despite still lying weakly on the floor, Rudo manages to muster enough strength to say that things aren't over between them. Not until he pays Jabber back with interest for what he did to Gris. Hearing this shocks Jabber, since he didn't expect Rudo to still be conscious after taking his poison, but then his eyes shift to Rudo's hand, where he spots a familiar pattern. He remarks that it's quite the coincidence, since they got that same pattern from the same series, and he says his boss will be thrilled to hear about it. The cleaners are left completely confused by what Jabber means, and all they can do is stare. Before disappearing, Jabber tells Rudo that he'll be back next time, this time fully prepared. With that, he slips into the manhole portal, and it vanishes instantly. The cleaners are shocked as they watch it disappear. Judging by the look on Rudo's face, it's clear he's furious, but he's also left wondering what Jabber meant when he said the series. About half an hour later, the cleaners trapped in the tunnel with Rudo are finally rescued. The moment he's free, Rudo rushes to Gris's side to check on him. Seeing Gris in such a dire medical state breaks his heart. He apologizes sincerely to Gris for destroying his talisman. Gris musters up some strength to respond. He tells Rudo that although the talisman was very important to him, what matters even more is that he was able to use it to fight back against Jabber. He reassures Rudo by saying he did great in the field today, and that's all that really matters. That was episode 7. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen.